When I first received the chair, I had picked it from a list of about four that were still available. And this one spoke to me because it was charming, it was cute. It was from a time period that I'm intrigued by, which was probably the 1910s or 20s. The chair was armless and had a cane seat. It was really heavy, solid wood. There was nothing wrong with it at all, with the exception that it was either made for a short statured person or was used for a purpose that I didn't feel would be useful today in our contemporary furniture land of ergonomic comfort. We really like our luxury comfort pieces of furniture that are sit-upons. So as you do, you call your mom, who's in her 80s and would have known about it. And immediately she said, I know exactly what that was used for. It was a mother's nursing chair. They stayed in the family generationally, they were passed down. And so I said, well, Mom, I'm thinking of chopping it up and doing something unique with it, maybe turning it into something else, either a sculpture or a different functional piece of furniture. And immediately my mother, tisk, tisk, please, this is a part of history. And you said there's nothing wrong with it. Why don't you paint something beautiful on it? Because I am a painter. And I thought about it and I thought, I don't know how to describe the impetus to chop shop it, to kind of disintegrate it from its previous incarnation. But I thought, I'm going to do this for better or for worse. And I hung up with my mom and she said, well, I hope you don't. I went ahead and got the Sawzall out and I made it into 9 random cuts. They were fairly random. There was some rhyme and reason to some of the cuts, but not all. I did want to preserve the rockers themselves. So I left them whole. And then I stood back and I had that moment of, what have I just done? I don't know if I can pull this off. And I might have done something I shouldn't have. And I kept hearing my mother's voice in the background of my mind. Don't obliterate history. There's something that needs to be preserved here. I thought, well, point of no return. And I had been working with other discards of furniture from previous projects, but I hadn't turned them into large tables before. They were smaller sculptures for the wall and they were abstract. And so I hemmed and I hawed and I basically got the big pile. I added these to a very large pile of deconstructed furniture parts that didn't have much rhyme or reason to the pile, but I started thinking of them as tinker toys. What if I construct something and let the pieces talk to me? And the first two that spoke to me were 2 long bedside rails that were from an old cherry 4-poster that's an odd size. So I enlisted a little bit of help and had the two joined together as a tabletop surface. And I kind of found that there were pieces that did say, please join me to this piece, and join them together. And then I'd look at, could they fit together into the concept of something that would either be a sculpture or something practical. And sure enough, it did end up quickly telling me, I think this is going to be a table. Let's make it a solid and useful object of furniture that could potentially be a conversation piece and does carry the memory, the history, the usefulness of each part. And sometimes you can tell what it may have been used for, and sometimes you can't. I married different woods, different time periods of history. And then I had a choice to make. Once I was very close to finishing adding all the components, I had to decide, what do I want the final finish to be? One of my big inspirations was Louise Nevelson. She did sculpture with found furniture and objects from the streets of New York City for many years, and they're quite famous installations now. And they're wall pieces. They're massive, massive wall pieces. When I looked at her work, I saw that she had monochromized her pieces. She decided, let's make it more about form than color relationships. So she made them all either all white or all black or all gold or all this or that. And that helps you just look at the shapes and the shadows and the negative space and see the shapes that are now created within all of that. And they're beautiful, beautiful pieces. And I decided that, since this really was about history and the use of the woods for furniture, I wanted to kind of bring it back into that world. And so knowing that the stain would take differently on different types of wood and different ages of wood, I went ahead and picked one nice dark walnut stain and did the entire piece with that. Then it was just put a finish coat on top of that, or 3 or 5 or however many coats of polyurethane it requires. There was a massive learning curve for me because I'm an abstract painter, and I have dabbled with found objects and printmaking and textile and all sorts of mediums. I'm thrilled with the piece that was created. I really hope that it finds a home that enjoys this level of whimsy married with history.